Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Judy Nash. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources in the Valley View School District.
And I'm Renee Calabrese, the Valley View Council President.
And we're here today to go over with you the PJC or Para-Joint Committee decisions that were actually made last year around this time, but we wanted to revisit those decisions with you as we get ready for the 2021-2022 school year, just to review them with you and make sure that everybody is ready to go for a new year with evaluation. For your reference, on the screen are members of the Para-Joint Committee. The Para-Joint Committee is made up of 6 members of the AFT and 6 administrative representatives that come together and discuss various topics with respect to the evaluation plan, make decisions, and then get ready to communicate those decisions out to you. And when we created a video last year to talk about the decisions that were made last year, we provided some background and rationale for 5 decisions that were made in the year prior. First of all, we talked about categories, and that would be the categories that our various certified educators are placed in for the purpose of evaluation. We also talked about the assessment type, weighting, and requirements for how we factor in student growth into the overall summative score. The next decision that we made was with respect to student growth for our non-tenured educators. And so there were some changes to the plan for that. There was also a change with respect to the requirements for recording student growth for our tenured educators. And then we also made some decisions at that time regarding informal observations for our tenured educators. So the PJC reconvened this past month to review those decisions that were made last year, see if they were still in line with what our objectives were. And we agreed on implementing those changes moving forward. And so again, that's what we're here today to do, to talk about and review what those decisions were.
So the first decision was based on some of the category changes that we had agreed to. If you recall, back in 2015, we decided the Para-Joint Committee to kind of go with an all-in approach where we had all certified staff either belonging to category A and B. And we decided after gathering feedback and listening to voice that we have made some changes to those categories. Category A, as you can see, is all certified educators. Category B is going to include our early childhood teachers, multi-needs teachers, stellar, and STEP teachers. And then category C, which is going to be 100% professional practice with no student growth, is pretty much all of our related service providers. And you can see the list here with everyone's roles who is now included in category C.
And just so for everyone's reference, we'll make sure that this presentation is being emailed to you. It will also be located on the Human Resources webpage. So you'll be able to click on those links as well so that you can take a look at the categories on your own if you are interested in doing that. So let's talk a little bit about the student growth changes that were made with respect to the evaluation. So just to briefly recap, in years prior, when we first looked at student growth, we went to a 50-50 model. So 50% of the evaluation for most educators was based on professional practice, and 50% was based on student growth. The PJC back in December of 2019 started those conversations and then later agreed that we were going to go to the state model, which was a 70% focus on professional practice and 30% student growth for those educators who require student growth factored into their evaluation. And so just to kind of go through those categories again, Renee just read off some of them, category A, B, and C. Category A will have the type 1 and a type 3 assessment factored in as their student growth. And so you'll remember that it used to be a type 2 and a type 3. In this case, now it is a type 1 and a type 3. We also made a decision to make sure that it was data only that was factored into the type 3, because if you'll recall, we had a professional practice rubric that was associated with that student growth. So we've removed that part. But with the type 3, you still have to have a goal and you still have to monitor, but it's really based on the data only, the achievement of the data, and not all of those other pieces with the type 3 assessment. With respect to the student growth assessment ratings, one thing that we needed to decide was what to do with type 1 so that until we can set a value table for what will be excellent, what will be proficient, and so on with the type 1 assessment. And due to the lack of state data, type 1 rating will be proficient as a default for the 21-22 school year. And this may also be the same case for the following school year. Just to review though, when we look at that weighting of student growth, that 30%, 25% will be your type 3 and 5% will be that defaulted type 1 for right now. And then it will be 5% of the type 1 moving forward.
And then our category B folks are going to continue to have 2 type 3 assessments, both of which will be weighted at 15% each. So you will have 2 type 3 assessments. The type 3 process will still stay the same, but the professional practice aspect of the rubric has been removed. And your student growth rating, each type will be weighted at 15%. For category C folks, the decision was to keep you guys at 100% professional practice, so there will be no student growth accounted into your evaluation.
And so we started talking a little bit about this a little bit earlier with respect to data that's available. And so just to review, for summatives that are due at the end of this coming school year, that type 1 is going to be defaulted to proficient because just right now we don't have the baseline data to be able to create a value table. As soon as we know that we have the baseline data and then that second endpoint data point to look at creating a value table, then we will revisit that and see what we're going to be doing for the following years afterwards. So we're hoping to have that ready to go for the next school year after this, but we will let you know as soon as we come to those decisions this coming school year. Okay, and then in terms of student growth options, because this past year was a little different with respect to evaluation, we just want to touch base with those folks who are what we call mid-cycle and are due to get their summative rating this coming school year. And so because you don't have student growth probably for even a type 3 from this past year, then what will happen is your student growth for your summative will come exclusively from this year. So your type 1, again, would be defaulted to a proficient if you have a type 1. Your type 3s, if you have 1 or 2 of them, those will all come from this coming school year.
For our first and second year teachers, student growth will continue to be waived.
Yeah, so they will remain in that category C and be 100% professional practice.
And then decision 4, along with our tenured educators, the student growth requirements for our type 3. Since, again, like Dr. Nash stated, we do not have data from last year, we will have to have a type 3 this year. Moving forward, the type 3 will only be required in your summative year, but we do recommend that even if it is not your summative year, that you still engage in a type 3 and gather that data from your student growth for a type 3.
And then the 5th decision had to do with informal observations for tenured teachers. So again, this does not apply to non-tenured teachers. This is strictly tenured teachers. At one time, the PJC had decided to make sure that there was an informal observation for tenured teachers in both years of their summative cycle. We decided last year to go back to the language of the school code, which only requires for a tenured teacher when they're getting their summative rating to have 1 informal observation and 1 formal observation. So that is what we are going to be going back to this coming year as well.
And then to kind of wrap up, we are aware that there has been some new teacher tenure legislation that has passed both houses, and we are currently awaiting the governor's signature that requires school districts by September of 2022 to develop a plan that will allow for tenured staff who receive a proficient or excellent on their evaluation to be placed on a 3-year evaluation cycle with just 1 informal every year that they are not being summatively evaluated. So there's still more to come on that. And once we get the A-OK that the governor has signed that bill, the PJC will get to work on creating that process.
Right. And then one other piece of work that the PJC is working on that was put on delay mode during the pandemic was an appeals process for tenured teachers who receive an unsatisfactory rating. So that's part of a relatively new school code provision as well. We want to make sure we have that plan in place as well at the end of this year. So we will be working on that as soon as we are able to come back to the table with one another. That, in a nutshell, are all of the updates with respect to evaluation. We hope that you are not focusing on that right now, that you are really focusing on some relaxation and rejuvenating. We want to thank you once again for all that you do for our students and all that you've done over this past year. And we're wishing you a safe and healthy summer vacation.
Have a great summer, everyone.